You slept 8 hours, you didn't do anything particularly hard yesterday, and you woke up this morning already tired. Not sleepy, tired, with the specific feeling that the day ahead is a list of things to get through rather than a day. And at some point recently, you've probably caught yourself thinking something like, "I'm just tired of all of it." Which is a strange thought because nothing is actually wrong. Nothing has happened. That's the part that makes it hard to explain to anyone, including yourself. So let's take that apart, because I don't think you're tired of your life. I think you're tired of running it. Here's the thing nobody accounts for. Almost everything in a modern day has been converted into a decision. What to eat from roughly infinite options. What to watch from 30,000 things. Which of the 11 messages to answer now and which to leave, knowing that leaving them costs something too. Which subscription to cancel. Which appointment to move. What to reply to that email and in what tone, whether to go to the thing, whether it's rude not to go to the thing. Not one of those is difficult. Every single one is small. But there are hundreds of them a day, and each one takes a tiny withdrawal from the same account. By 8 in the evening, the account is empty, and you can't point to anything you did that would justify feeling like this. So you assume something's wrong with you when actually you've just spent the day making 400 small decisions that nobody counts as work. That's the first half of it. Here's the second half, and it's the one that really does the damage. There is no longer a moment in the day when nothing is required of you. Think about what a day used to contain not that long ago. The shops closed. The office couldn't reach you. There was nothing on television. If someone wanted you, they'd have to wait until tomorrow. There were enforced gaps, not because anyone was being wise about rest, but because the world simply stopped being available for a few hours. Those gaps are gone. Not gradually, completely. Your work can reach you at 11 at night. Something is always open. There's always something you could be doing, and therefore something you're implicitly choosing not to do. The day never closes anymore. It just gets quieter, which means you're never off. You're only ever less on. And that's the difference between being tired and being depleted. Tired is fixed by sleep. Depleted is what happens when the system never fully powers down. It keeps a low-level process running in the background, and that process doesn't stop when you lie down. That's why 8 hours of sleep can leave you exactly where you started. You didn't rest. You were unconscious for a while, with everything still open. Now, the thing you almost certainly do about this, and I do it too, is reach for the phone. And I want to be careful here, because I'm not going to give you a lecture about screens. But it's worth knowing what actually happens. Scrolling isn't rest. It's paused input with more input. The part of you that was making 400 decisions is now making 400 more, just smaller and faster. Swipe, skip, keep, ignore. So you finish an hour of it feeling flatter than when you started, and mildly annoyed with yourself, which is an extra cost you didn't need. The reason it's so hard to stop is that it's the only thing that asks nothing of you while still filling the silence. It's not that it's enjoyable. It's that it's the lowest effort thing available, and you are running on very little. There's a very specific version of this that happens at night, and almost everyone does it without knowing it has a name. You're exhausted. You should go to bed, and instead you sit there, watching something you're not really watching, scrolling something you're not really reading, actively refusing to sleep, not because you're not tired, because going to bed means the day is over, and the day contained nothing that was yours, and tomorrow starts the same loop. So you stay up, taking back time from your own sleep, because that hour after everyone's gone to bed is the only part of the day nobody has a claim on. And then you're more tired tomorrow, and you do it again. Then there's the weekend, which is supposed to fix all this and doesn't. 2 days off, and by Sunday evening you feel exactly as flat as you did on Friday. Sometimes worse, because the weekend wasn't empty either. It was errands, admin, catching up, the things you postponed all week, plus the social obligations you agreed to a month ago when you had more energy than you do now. Time off isn't the same as time without demands, and almost nobody's weekend is actually the second thing. And there's a layer of guilt sitting on top of all of it, which is its own quiet tax. Because objectively, your life is fine. Nothing terrible is happening. There are people with far harder lives who complain far less. So you conclude you have no right to feel like this, and you keep it to yourself. and now you're carrying both the tiredness and the private verdict that you shouldn't be tired. That second part is often heavier than the first. It's worth saying plainly, exhaustion isn't a competition, and a load doesn't stop being heavy because someone else is carrying more. There's another layer to this, and I think it's the one that turns tiredness into that specific feeling of being tired of everything. Look at your week honestly and ask how much of it is yours. Not selfish. Yours, chosen by you for no reason other than that you wanted it. For most people, the honest answer is almost none. The week is obligations, maintenance, and recovery from obligations. Work, admin, errands, replies, the constant background upkeep of being a functioning adult. And then a small window at the end where you're too flat to do anything except the phone thing. That's when people start saying they're tired of life. But notice what's actually being described. It isn't that life is bad. It's that nothing in it currently feels authored. You're maintaining a system rather than living inside it, and a maintained system with no authorship in it starts to feel like a job you can't quit. And here's the detail that gives it away, and it's oddly reassuring. Ask someone in this state what they do with a completely free month. No obligations, no consequences, and they almost always have an answer, sometimes immediately, which tells you something important. The wanting is still there. It hasn't gone. It's just underneath a load, and it can't get out from under it. People who genuinely don't want anything anymore don't answer that question with a list. They answer it with nothing. So if you've got a list, however small, that's real information about where you actually are. I want to say something else honestly here, because it matters. There's a version of this that isn't about modern life at all. If the tiredness is constant, if it's been months, if nothing brings any relief, and even the things you used to like feel flat and gray, that's worth taking to a doctor. Not because you're broken, but because that particular pattern has physical causes surprisingly often. Thyroid, iron, sleep disorders, and it's also what depression looks like from inside. Both are treatable, and both are missed constantly because people assume they're just tired. So the check is simple. Does anything still lift it, even briefly? If some things do, you're depleted. If nothing does, for weeks, that's worth having looked at properly by someone qualified. There's no bravery in guessing. One more thing worth naming, because it catches people off guard. This kind of depletion doesn't usually feel like sadness. It feels like flatness, a kind of muted, colorless quality where things that should register just don't. Good news lands softly. A film you'd normally love is fine. You're not upset, you're just not much of anything. And because it isn't painful, it's easy to ignore for months. Pain gets attention. Flatness gets tolerated. That's exactly why this state tends to run so much longer than it needs to. All right, assuming it's depletion, what actually helps? Not doing less. That's the advice everyone gives, and it usually isn't available. The obligations don't disappear because you're tired. What helps is reducing decisions, which is a different thing entirely. Make the small repeating ones once, in advance, and then stop making them. Same breakfast, same few meals on rotation. Clothes decided the night before. A standing evening where you always do the same thing. This sounds joyless, and it is the opposite. Every decision you remove is a small deposit back into the account, and you'll feel it within days. The goal isn't a rigid life. It's spending your limited deciding capacity on things that actually matter instead of on lunch. The second thing is harder and more important. Build back a real off state since the world will no longer provide one. That means a period, however short, where nothing can reach you and nothing is expected. Not scrolling, not relaxing with something on in the background. Actually closed. Phone in another room, nothing pending, nowhere to be. 20 minutes counts. The first few times it will feel uncomfortable and slightly boring, and that discomfort is precisely the sign that you haven't had one in a long time. And the third, 1 hour a week, that is yours in the authored sense. Not useful, not self-improvement, not something you'll be asked about, something you chose purely because you wanted it. That single hour does more for the tired of everything feeling than any amount of extra sleep, because what it restores isn't energy. It's the sense that you're the one running your life rather than the one servicing it. And be realistic about the pace, because that matters too. You didn't arrive here in a week, and it won't lift in a week. What usually happens is subtler and easier to miss. Not a sudden return of energy, but small signs that the color is coming back. You laugh at something properly. You notice you're looking forward to a thing. A Tuesday evening feels like an evening rather than a gap between obligations. Those are the actual markers, and they show up long before you describe yourself as rested. Watch for them, because if you're waiting to feel transformed, you'll miss the fact that it's already improving. Because that's what this actually is, underneath. You're not tired of being alive. You're tired of a version of being alive that has almost no you in it. The decisions, the maintenance, the pings, the endless low-grade availability. None of that is life. It's the admin around life. And it's grown so large that it now takes up the space where the living used to be. That's worth naming plainly, because I'm tired of everything sounds like a verdict on your whole existence, and it usually isn't. It's a verdict on your current arrangement. Arrangements can be changed, slowly and partially, and even a small change is felt quickly. Much more quickly than people expect. You were never built to be available all day, decide constantly, and rest with one eye open. Nobody was. The fact that you're tired doesn't mean you're failing at modern life. It means you're an ordinary person carrying an amount of small, constant load that no one has ever had to carry before, and quietly assuming it should be easy. It isn't easy, and the exhaustion you feel isn't a character flaw. It's an accurate response.